Husband's been secretly planning to leave everything behind and move in with his mistress in another city. And I'm saying it out loud because sometimes the only way to keep from floating off the floor is to pin yourself to a sentence. I'm Tamsin, I'm 34, and I'm a nurse in the cardiac unit, which means most days I teach frightened hearts how to behave and chart rhythms until the ink looks like rain. And then I come home and discover my own life has been sneaking palpitations when I wasn't looking. It started with a casserole. I wish it were more elegant than that, but honestly, most disasters in my orbit smell faintly of onions. I was portioning out meals for the week because night shifts are ruthless and I like my future self enough to feed her. My husband, Reed, 36, urban planner, fond of maps and words like livability, was at a late charrette, which is a fancy meeting that says, "We're going to argue about sidewalks until someone blinks." He texted, "Don't wait up." I wasn't going to. The oven timer dinged. I pulled the dish, set it on the stove, and went to grab the good oven mitts from the bottom drawer, the one that catches everything we don't name. The mitts weren't there. A folder was. A paper folder, not digital, which already made it suspicious because Reed is the kind of person who stores his childhood in the cloud. I know you're not supposed to look through things that aren't addressed to you. I also know how to read an EKG, and sometimes the line goes weird and you put your hand on the patient, you don't ask first. I opened it. Printouts. Color. Tabs. I felt the way I feel when a monitor flatlines in the middle of a joke. A Craigslist-style listing for a one-bedroom in Richmond 3 hours away, walking distance to a park with a lake and a bakery whose croissants have a cult. A deposit receipt. A photo of a living room with light like a promise. A moving company estimate with our address in the from and another address in the to. His initials on the signature line, neat, confident, a man who believes in the authority of his own pen. A budget spreadsheet. In the notes column, bullet points, switch utilities, forward mail, storage locker for extra furniture, discuss cat adoption policy with building. And then this, tell T, an incomplete phrase circled 3 times. I sat down on the kitchen floor because nurses learn to lower themselves before gravity gets dramatic. The casserole steamed like someone else's patience. I turned a page. A list labeled New City. Coffee shops, bike trails, a library branch with sunny tables starred, a small indie cinema he'd always said he missed. This would all be charming if it weren't a blueprint for my absence. Under the papers, tickets. Not metaphorical, actual train tickets to same destination, a Friday 3 weeks from now. Passenger names, Reed Mason, and there she was, Amelia Ward. The name hit me like opening a freezer, familiar from long ago small talk. Amelia, marketing at an architecture firm. The woman who laughed like she trusted the air. The one who, at a rooftop party last summer, had complimented my shoes and then asked Reed whether roundabouts make people nicer drivers. I remember thinking, here's a person who knows how to make an engineer feel interesting. I shut the folder because shutting things is one of my skills. I put it back where I found it. I plated a portion of casserole for the morning shift. I labeled it because even rage likes organization. Then I washed my hands because in my world we always wash our hands before we touch anything that can't forgive. When he came home, he smelled like dry erase markers and earnestness. He kissed my head and told me a story about a stakeholder who used the phrase sidewalk equity with such solemnity that he forgot to breathe. I laughed in the right place. I have this muscle, the one that understands compassion is not the same as permission. He asked if I wanted tea. I said yes because tea is a neutral country when your life is about to go to war. There is a difference between having proof and having a plan. All night, I lay beside him and negotiated with my own lungs. Breath in, breath out, don't practice the confrontation like a closing argument. In the morning, I texted the charge nurse and asked to switch my shift. She wrote back a string of hearts and a skull, our code for I've got you and also everything is killing me. I brewed coffee I didn't drink. I waited until he went to shower and then opened his laptop. I wasn't guessing, I knew the password because he thinks passwords should be romantic, a place we once got lost in Rome. His calendar was open to a month with new geometry. This Friday, site visit. Saturday, brunch with A. Sunday, pack with a tiny suitcase emoji as if to soften the blow with cute. His email had a filter labeled consulting. I clicked. It contained no consulting. It contained a thread titled Us Logistics, and my name did what names do when they're used against us. It froze. I sank into his chair and read. Their tone was managerial. I hate them for that, for making it sound like the train of their lives could be boarded with a respectful cue. Lease signed, she wrote. Have to call the gas company. Can you change your payroll direct deposit? We'll need first last for the bank. He replied, yes. I'll sell the bike. I'll cancel the YMCA membership. Will you send the list of must-haves for the kitchen? I don't care about spatulas as long as you're there. I care about spatulas. I closed the laptop, stood, and walked into the hallway where the mirror lives, the one with unfortunate lighting that tells the truth you didn't ask for. I looked less like a person betrayed than a person awake early. I put on my scrubs because I didn't know what else to wear while falling apart. You should know something about me. I am not dramatic in public. At work, I coax nurses through 12-hour nights with bad jokes and the promise of bagels. I have held the hands of men who realized at 4 a.m. that love is not an organ you can ask to please calm down. I have comforted wives who found lipstick that was not theirs, whose husbands' hearts insisted on misbehaving right along with their plans. I always thought if my life blew up I'd be a siren. Turns out I'm a quiet step, a checklist. I put the kettle on. I wrote a list titled Facts. I wrote another titled What I Need. Then I waited for him at our kitchen table with my stethoscope still around my neck because I forgot it was there. He came in, hair damp, tie in his hand, and saw my face. There's that instant when the expression changes, the human version of a power outage flipping to generator. He dropped the tie on the chair back and Saturday, okay, he said softly. Okay. You found it. Folder in the oven mitt drawer, I said, because the world is still hilarious. You hid it in a place designed to keep me from burning myself. He closed his eyes like someone who knows metaphors are about to get feral. I was going to tell you, he murmured, and I believe he believed that, which is different from it being true. When? My voice didn't shake, my hands did, but they had something to do and that helps. Before or after the moving truck arrived? Before or after the cat adoption policy? He winced. I didn't want you to come home to an empty place. I wanted to, he stopped, aware of the cliff. I wanted to tell you when there was a there, not just a mistake. I told myself that was kindness. You're an urban planner, I said evenly. You built an elsewhere in stages and called it kindness. He took a breath big enough to share. I'm in love with her, he said. And there it was, the sentence that rearranges furniture. He watched me like the room might tilt. I didn't mean for it to happen. We were on a project together. We argued about bus lanes. She told me I argue like I want the road to apologize. We grabbed coffee after meetings to unspool. She knew about cities in the same way I do, like they're a species worth saving. It felt like speaking without translating. And me? I asked. What am I in this grammar? You're my home, he said, and I wanted to slap him with a potholder. That's why it took me so long to be this cruel. Don't flatter yourself, I said pleasantly, which is the tone I use when telling a patient that if they remove their 4 one more time, I will move them nearer the nurse's station where we can surveillance their nonsense. Cruelty isn't a delay. It's a design. He nodded in the small way people nod when the doctor tells them how long recovery takes. He reached across the table, stopped himself, set his hand on the wood like it could hold him. Ask me anything, he said. I'll answer. Did you sleep with her? I asked because sometimes you need one simple horrible thing you can label. Yes, he said. Twice before we admitted it had a name. More after. I hate that you're picturing that. I hate the part of me that didn't stop the second I understood the shape of this. Are you leaving Friday? I asked. He nodded. Were you planning to tell me Thursday night? Another nod, a tiny one, embarrassed almost to be alive. I looked at the list titled What I Need. I read it like a script. I need you to cancel the movers right now, I said. I need you to write to her in a way that is complete and does not ask her to comfort you for a decision you made. I need you to book a hotel for a week while I decide which pieces of our life are mine and which are yours. I need you to tell your mother and your sister so I don't have to endure a single narrative where I am cold or dramatic or didn't make you feel seen. I need you to answer my questions without decorating them. And I need you to hand me every key you have to everything because I'm a nurse and I've learned my way around keys. He swallowed like something was catching in his throat. Okay, he said. Yes. He took out his phone. He cancelled the movers. He forwarded the receipts. He emailed the building in Richmond saying he'd made a mistake. He typed to Amelia and showed me the message. He said the words, "I am ending this now," and for the first time since the folder I believed him about something. Then I went to work because hearts keep misbehaving and the 11 to 7 is not going to staff itself just because my life is an art film. I wrapped my stethoscope around my neck and kissed the cat's head and walked out into the morning like a person who can't afford to be interesting. At the hospital, the world is always the appropriate size, urgent and boring at once. Mrs. Eldridge pulled off her oxygen because she hates the smell of plastic, and I coaxed it back on with a story about my aunt's blackberry cobbler that I shamelessly invented. A resident asked me whether a patient's PVCs were concerning, and I said, "They're loud, not lethal," which is a sentence I would later apply to my own brain. After rounds, I sat in the break room scrolling the worst version of my phone. I had texted my sister, and she had replied with a rapid-fire volley of expletives and then, "Do you want me to come over and just be there and not talk or talk and not breathe? You know I can adjust. She is the best part of our family." I asked her to wait until tonight. I wanted to be alone with not alone. My charge nurse, a woman named Bex who has eyeliner like a superhero mask, came and sat next to me and slid half a sandwich in front of me because she knows me. I don't eat when earthquakes happen. "I'm not going to ask," she said. "I am going to say the thing you say when it's my life. Don't narrate this for him. Narrate it for you." When my shift was over, the sun had the audacity to be pretty. I drove home on autopilot, which is a phrase we use like we didn't just describe dissociation. Reed had cleaned the living room. It was the kind of panic tidying that leaves a room smelling like citrus and confession. He'd packed a bag. The hotel confirmation lay on the coffee table. He'd written a letter on paper. Of course he had. He speaks best when he can edit. "I don't know how to ask for anything from you," it said. "I know I took us for granted like breath. I know that's cliché. Clichés are often true because we drag them around so long. I will do whatever you decide is the kind version of ending or rebuilding. I do not deserve rebuilding, but I want it. There are two paths in stories like this as far as people think: forgiveness or fury, stay or go. There's actually a third, which is silence long enough for your own voice to catch up. I took that one." He moved to the hotel. The cat curled into the warm crater he left, because cats believe in physics, not loyalty. I called a therapist I'd found 2 years ago after a tough winter but never used. An older woman named Corinne who wears linen aggressively. "Can you get here tomorrow?" she asked. I could. I did. Corinne's office smells like orange peels and Mercury retrograde. She sat me down and asked for the facts, then asked for the feelings, then asked for the fantasies. "What do you want to happen if reality were kinda?" I told her everything and then cooked a soup of the words and ate them because sometimes confession makes you ravenous. "You know how to keep people alive," she said. "Do you know how to keep a self alive when someone you love holds a pillow over its face?" I laughed because she's dramatic, which I respect. "I think so," I said. "I have a list." We made another list, not decisions, boundaries. He could not come over unless I invited him. He could not ask to fix it with gestures bigger than sentences. He could not rewrite the origin story of his affair to make me a co-author. He could watch me decide without offering commentary. He could tell Amelia nothing beyond the necessary. He could grieve what he broke without turning me into his grief counselor. I texted him the list. He replied, "Understood," and for the first time since his idiotic folder I liked his choice of word, a statement, not a plea. Days became a sequence of very boring victories. I didn't text him at midnight. I blocked her without ceremony because my heart does not need push notifications. I sat on the living room floor and went through our books and pulled out the ones that were his, the ones that were mine, the ones that had our notes pressed into the margins like fossils. I cried over Renata Adler because I am a cliché too. He kept showing up in the small ways he was allowed, emailed me the passwords to everything without me asking, forwarded every cancellation confirmation, called his mother and told her the truth while I was on speaker because I have no interest in being a family's bad idea of a villain. His mother cried and then said, "I'll bring Tamsin a pie," which is a woman who knows both something and nothing about triage. He told his boss he needed a week, which he did not deserve and also did. He walked to the hotel, he said, in the rain, which I refused to allow into the narrative because pathos is a cheap spice. After a week, Corinne asked me which way the scale tilted. Toward leaving, I said, but not because I don't love him. Because I don't want to live in a house with a trapdoor. She nodded, wrote something down that looked like a grocery list in a dead language, and then asked, "If you stay, what would it take to trust your own idea of the floor?" That question did not leave me alone. Reed requested one meeting at a neutral place. He picked a cafe that makes everything look like Instagram is a valid religion. We sat by the window like two people who once had a shared calendar. He didn't perform. He didn't order me a pastry as if flakes of butter absolve. He said, "I chose her because she felt like sunlight I didn't have to earn. I chose leaving because planning feels like virtue. I realize now I was practicing a life instead of telling you I wanted hours to feel more awake. I do not expect you to reward this clarity." I asked him what he loved about me because of all the petty questions. That one is the ancient queen. He didn't reach for adjectives. He said, "You make every room kinder without pretending it wasn't cruel. You know the names of things and you share them. You laugh like a dare. When I'm with you, I believe in the precision of care." It was a good answer, which is infuriating. We didn't decide that day. We decided in 100 unphotogenic moments. He stayed away long enough for my body to relearn how to sleep without a second heartbeat in the bed. I switched to day shifts for a month so I could stop having the kind of dreams that wake up and ask to be treated as evidence. He returned to his office to pack up a desk he'd already mentally emptied. He sent the building in Richmond a final email, "We're not coming." We refunded the deposit together, I insisted. He sent Amelia a last message that I drafted with Corinne's flair for honest mercy. "I will not be in contact again. I'm sorry for the ways I made promises as if they were weather." He moved home on a Sunday with 2 suitcases and the face of a man who had found out consequences are not the same as rain. He took the couch for 3 months while we let the house learn our edges again. We started seeing a couples therapist who talks like a traffic engineer. "We need a different route for conflict or you'll keep creating the same congestion." Reed loved that. I rolled my eyes and also listened. We put a map of the city on the wall and marked the places we would go together when we felt like an us. The park bench where we once named a squirrel auditoria, the taco truck that started our fight about cilantro, the river walk where he asked me to marry him and I said, "Do I have to wear heels to answer?" And he said, "Absolutely not." And I said yes because that's how I make decisions, in shoes I can run in. I'd like to tell you we stayed and became bliss professionals. What we did was less glamorous and more useful. We tried, then we tried again, then we stopped trying for a week and remembered we are animals who need sunlight. We made a rule that any secret longer than 48 hours becomes a conversation, even if it's dumb like "I spent too much on grapes." We made a ritual of checking each other's calendars on Sunday nights, not to supervise, to translate. We go on ridiculous mundane dates to the hardware store because apparently in some other life that's exactly where betrayal would like to bloom, and now I prefer to keep eyes on the inventory. Sometimes I think about that city where he wanted to move with her. I picture the bakery we won't eat at together, the hallway we won't scuff with our life. Sometimes I feel a tenderness for my alternate self, the one who would have learned where the light hits that couch at 4 p.m. and who would have claimed a new library card like a small flag. I bless her. I let her go. I stayed. That's the part one didn't know until I wrote all this down. I stayed not because leaving was too hard or because forgiveness is glamorous. I stayed because after weeks of listening, the quiet voice that calibrates my oxygen whispered that this was a marriage with bones. I stayed because he did the ugly work in public, the kind you can't crop. I stayed because when I imagined walking away, my chest felt like discharge paperwork when you know the patient needs one more day. I stayed because I remembered that I love him in a way that isn't embarrassed by reality. Last week at 3 a.m., a patient coded. We ran the choreography. After, I stood under the fluorescent light and cried because adrenaline is a tax. I texted him one word, rough. He replied, coffee waiting. You don't have to talk. When I got home, he was asleep on the couch, the good oven mitts on the counter, a mug beside them, and a note, no more hiding in the drawers. It was such a small thing. It felt like a brand new city would build without moving. If you're me on your kitchen floor with papers you didn't consent to and a casserole cooling like it's the only adult in the room, here's what I can offer: nurse to person, breathe. Then count. Facts, then feelings, then futures. Don't let anyone rush you into saint or executioner. Ask for keys. Make lists. Let dull kindnesses pile up: sleep, soup, someone to text, skulls and hearts. Don't confuse planning with love or drama with meaning. Do not store anything you can't lift inside a wall. Tonight we ate pasta we didn't deserve and planned a walk we probably do. He asked how my day was and listened the way people listen who know they almost lost the job. I told him Mrs. Eldridge scolded me for my ponytail being rude. He laughed. The cat knocked a pen off the table. The city hummed outside, our noisy, imperfect third. I'm still Tamsin. I still chart rhythms and make lists and ask stubborn hearts to try again. His included. And when I turned off the kitchen light, the room kept its shape, the floor stayed, the drawers held only what they were supposed to, and in the dark we walked through a home that is ours because we keep choosing it out loud where the air can hear.